If you look back at our channel, we really haven't covered any of the big Nintendo Switch 2 leaks because, well, I just didn't find them that interesting. However, these new leaked pictures of the Switch 2's Joy-Con that have been confirmed by pretty much every news outlet and insider who's seen them reveal one very interesting feature. This optical sensor looking part on the Joy-Con's rails that would allow it to be used as a mouse like this. This I actually do find interesting because it's not just saying, oh, the Switch 2 can now render in 4K, or it will be this powerful or whatever. This is interesting because it actually opens up new gameplay possibilities in the actual games themselves. The console is super exciting, but we're all excited about the console for the games we will play on the console. That's what I want to talk about. I would hope that's what everyone actually wants to hear about. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at these leaked images, and maybe this is an optical sensor that'll allow your Switch to be used as a mouse. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is and they'll barely use it, like the IR camera. But let's just say if this is a new feature that Nintendo's really pushing for the Switch 2, how would it be implemented in the actual games? That's the real significance of this Nintendo Switch 2 leak. And today we're going to be going through 10 games that I think would have to get this new Joy-Con mouse control method in some way or another, including a couple of games that I think it might actually make a little worse. So hey guys, it's Thomas from the Switch Shop, and let's jump right into it. Again, I don't really want to talk about the leaks themselves. I'd rather just talk about the games, but very briefly, just as some quick background, these two images were posted on this Chinese forum that I'm not even going to try to pronounce, have a serial number that's valid by Nintendo's Czech warranty page, and have overall been corroborated by pretty much everyone out there on the internet. Specifically, they have this little slot right here, which looks a lot like the optical sensor on the bottom of a mouse. This would allow the Joy-Con to be used like this on a table or flat surface and kind of function as a mouse, with your fingers on the triggers and bumpers. So that's the leak, but now let's get into the actual games that this could impact. I'm gonna list each game and why I think this would be so useful, starting off with the biggest one that comes to mind, that is Mario Maker 3. The Mario Maker series started off on the Wii U, and there it was awesome. It was so fun to create levels using the gamepad's touchscreen. When it came to the Switch, well, it's still pretty fun if you play in handheld, because then you also have access to the touchscreen. Unfortunately though, making levels on the TV, for me at least, is just not fun. Using a cursor bound to an analog stick just feels like I'm creatively being put in a straitjacket compared to the Wii U gamepad flexibility that the original Mario Maker provided. Being able to bound this new cursor to essentially what is a Joy-Con mouse would be genuinely so nice for this game. It wouldn't be revolutionary, but it's the exact quality of life improvement or tweak that I would love to see and would make Mario Maker 3 a must-buy sequel, even more than it probably already was gonna be. I mean, seriously, think about it. In my opinion, this is the best possible way Nintendo could go about making levels on the TV. Unless they were to somehow add another controller with a touchscreen, the analog stick is just a bit slow and clunky, but using like gyro aiming to control a cursor would be far too imprecise for a game like Mario Maker. Using the Joy-Con as a mouse is quite literally the happy medium, and already shows why I'm getting so excited about this leak in particular. It actually leads to improvements within the games themselves, and it's not just graphical updates or quality of life console enhancements. The next game I want to talk about is very similar. It is Mario Paint 2. Mario Paint on the SNES came bundled with a mouse, so there would literally be no better time than now for it to get a sequel. In fact, I could see this being like a launch title if they really lean into this Joy-Con mouse gimmick. Basically, Mario Paint is, well, just that. It's kind of like an MS Paint, but with a Mario flair. It actually feels like a spiritual predecessor to Mario Maker, with just how much Mario Maker borrowed from Mario Paint in its quirky UI elements and all that. I would love getting a new Mario Paint though, just for the music alone. The Mario Paint soundtrack is seriously underrated, and again, this is like one of the only Nintendo games that like heavily uses a mouse, so I have to talk about getting a sequel. However, those two games, Mario Maker 3 and Mario Paint 2, use the mouse pretty much solely as like, well, a mouse cursor. But how could it be used in actual gameplay? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. First things first, 100% the next Mario Party will use these in minigames. Imagine a minigame like Trace Race, except instead of using the analog stick, now you are using a mouse. If there is one of these sensors on both Joy-Con, then of course the next Mario Party game would use this. Super Mario Party and a bunch of minigames in Jamboree are Joy-Con exclusive anyway, so clearly Nintendo doesn't have a problem locking content behind just using the Joy-Con. However, with this new mouse sensor, it it would actually feel like it makes sense to be locked behind just the Joy-Con. Most of the Joy-Con exclusive minigames in the Switch Mario parties did not have to be Joy-Con exclusive at all they used is gyro controls, so I could have at least used my Pro controller. Here, this is something that would only be on the Joy-Con, so the minigames would actually be so much better for it. Again, Trace Race is the obvious example that comes to mind, but there are so many unique minigame possibilities that using a mouse could provide, and it would also just freshen up the Mario Party series, as obviously we've never been able to use a mouse before. I guess the closest we've gotten is like using the stylus in the DS and 3DS Mario parties, but this is still completely different from that. The next potential game I want to talk about is a brand new entry into the Pilot Wings series. I've never gotten to play a ton of Pilot Wings, but this series just seems so relaxing. For some reason, my mind instantly shot to the mouse being used as a throttle for the plane that you're flying. Imagine this. You have one Joy-Con in your left hand. This is your steering wheel. You use the gyro and tilt to steer your plane. However, to determine how much power you're giving your plane, your right hand has your Joy-Con on the couch or a table, and you literally have to pull it back as if you're pulling the throttle in a plane to give your virtual plane more power, make it go higher, lower, and all that. I think this would be a super fun and creative way to control a new plane in a potential new Pilot Wings. This is kind of an obscure one. I don't think the fact that there is a mouse cursor confirms a new Pilot Wings at all. In fact, I might be the only person who combined those two ideas in my head, but I did combine them in my head, and now the idea of pulling a Joy-Con back like a throttle for a plane is too fun to ignore. This idea is stuck in my mind, and so now I'm letting you guys know as well. Comment down below if that's a good idea or if I am tweaking. And also comment down below what games you'd like to see use this mouse accessory. There are so many great options here. I'm literally just going through 10 of them that came to mind that I think could showcase the variety that this feature could be used for, but I'm curious if there's some series or concepts I didn't mention in this video. Please comment down below, because this is just a very interesting thing. It's a fun thought experiment. All right, next up we have Switch Sports. If we do get a Switch Sports 2 or a Switch Sports Resort, I feel like this feature would have to be used, especially considering that game is Joy-Con only already. So is anyone down for shuffleboard? Or curling, I guess, if there's a winter theme to the next Switch Sports game. But yeah, dragging your Joy-Con back and forth across a table or pushing it across a table for shuffleboard seems like one of the more straightforward applications that takes kind of the Wii Sports approach. Everyone knows how to swing a baseball bat, so swinging your Wiimote is super self-explanatory. This would be kind of the same thing for shuffleboard or curling or really any game that requires you to scrub something. There are definitely other sports where this could work too. Again, comment down below with any you're interested in. Alright, the next game I want to talk about, I'm giving it a Luigi's Mansion theme, but it could kind of be anything. Obviously, when you think about a mouse and gaming, the first thing that comes to my mind at least is shooter games. That's most of what I play on my PC anyway, and that's the only time I use a mouse. And when I think about this in the context of Nintendo, the Mario Party 8 minigame Booting Gallery shows up. This was a pointer control minigame where you basically just have to shoot a bunch of boos in a Luigi's Mansion style house. Now granted, I understand that this is like a Mario Party minigame and not really related to the core Luigi's Mansion gameplay at all, but imagine Luigi's Mansion 4 has some sort of gimmick or side mode or something where you go first person and need to blast boos instead of just suck them up with the poltergeist, maybe using some sort of new poltergeist modification made by EGAT. For something like that, having the aiming with the mouse Joy-Con would be super fun. Not only would it probably just be more precise than using an analog stick and gyro controls, but it would also just break up the gameplay. I love this concept so much just because it's a new way to use your same controller. It breaks up the monotony of doing the same thing over and over again with your hands and forces players to almost get a little bit uncomfortable, which for a lot of games I don't think is good, but for something like a Luigi's Mansion, which is just a single player goofy campaign, I think the more variety, the better, to be honest. So maybe there were a couple of boss fights or hidden optional challenges that put you in this first person shooting boos kind of format. Next game I want to talk about that could definitely use the mouse is WarioWare. Out of every game I'm going to talk about in this video, this one could probably use the mouse in the most interesting ways. WarioWare is just a collection of super small little micro games. These are generally over within 5 seconds, and they ramp up in speed and difficulty as your rounds progress. Using the Joy-Con as a mouse would just open up so many new possibilities for micro games in the next WarioWare installment that I don't really know where to even begin here. Of course, you have your standard click all these buttons as fast as you can with the mouse cursor, but I could low-key see it turning into a little bit of an Osu style game, obviously with a very heavy WarioWare coat of paint. WarioWare specifically, to me, just seems like the type of game franchise that would see this weird new control scheme that's pretty unorthodox for not just Nintendo, but like video game consoles as a whole, and Wario would dive headfirst into it and be like, oh yeah, we're just gonna use this in like half of our game now, get used to it. The next game I want to talk about is Detective Pikachu. This could also be a Professor Layton, maybe even an Ace Attorney, or a Famicom Detective Club. I know that's a wide variety of games, but I just think in a detective game, physically dragging your Joy-Con around as if it was a magnifying glass over evidence that you're looking for clues on makes too much sense. In the more adult games, probably not Detective Pikachu, but you could even use the mouse as like your signature on signing a warrant, or shining a black light on a crime scene in a game like Famicom Detective Club. There are a lot of different ideas for a point-and-click style detective-y game to utilize this new mouse technology. I'm very curious to see how they'd use it, but to me, the idea of using it as a magnifying glass to like aim at exactly what you need to inspect to get a clue just makes too much sense. I don't know. Alright, now we're moving into the final 2 out of the 10 games I want to talk about. And so far, we've had a bunch of ideas of how Nintendo could and will use this mouse feature. Some of these ideas make complete sense, like Mario Maker, Mario Paint 2, Mario Party minigames, and some of them are a little bit more obscure, but I think they'd be fun ideas, like the last Detective Pikachu idea or the Pilot Wings one. But as I said before, when thinking of a mouse and video games, the first thing that comes to your mind is shooters. And so the final 2 games I want to talk about are Splatoon and Metroid Prime 4 specifically, but any Metroid Prime game. And I kind of want to talk about why I think these might not be a good idea to use this mouse implementation. First, let's start off with Splatoon, which is one I would definitely not want to see add this, at least to like the main Splatoon game mode. First things first, to be honest, the gyro controls and like general feel of Splatoon's controls already feel really good. I feel like adding in a completely different control scheme where you can use a Joy-Con as a mouse would just mess that up. Not only that, but using your Joy-Con on its side as a mouse in a competitive shooter like this just does not seem comfortable. I think this Joy-Con mouse thing is going to be really fun in small gameplay bursts, such as a Mario Party minigame or a Switch sports game. It can also be fun when used as like a cursor for creating a level or doing Mario Paint stuff. But using it in a game like Splatoon, which is really fast-paced and twitchy and requires precise aiming, I don't know. To me, that just seems like a bit of a stretch. It doesn't really feel like it's fixing a problem. In fact, I think it would just make things more complicated. However, I would be more than happy to see it used in a side mode. I actually played a bunch of the Table Turf Battle game mode in Splatoon 3. As far as like a Splatoon side mode goes, I think that's like the best one we've ever had. So I don't know, if they wanted to make some sort of like top-down version of Splatoon where you control where your Inkling is based on like dragging your mouse around, that I think could actually work really well. However, that would have to be obviously relegated to a side mode within a potential Splatoon 4, and I don't think you mess with the controls for the base like normal version of Splatoon that you play when like ranked or the single player or salmon run, because that's just, it's already pretty good. Same thing with Metroid Prime 4. I've been playing through Metroid Prime Remastered using the gyro and stick controls, and in my opinion, this is the best way we've ever had to play Metroid Prime. It makes it feel modern. You don't just magically lock on to stuff, but you can if you want to while holding down the ZL button, but you also have the minute action of tilting your controller for gyro. I don't really think they should change that. It would be very tough for me to imagine a control scheme that requires as many button inputs for like changing your visor, switching out weapons and all that for Metroid Prime, which is like stuff you gotta do, you know, you gotta be able to do it fast. I don't know how they'd have a control scheme that has that many buttons when half of your controller, aka half of a Joy-Con, is being used for aiming, so you can't really access the face button super easily there. Again, maybe if there was some side mode that required really precise controls, but like Samus didn't move around, kind of like a shooting gallery, then yeah, bring on the mouse input. I think that could potentially work pretty well. But I don't know, with Splatoon and Metroid Prime 4, I think those games, despite the fact that seemingly they would work great with a mouse considering they're both shooters, I would just personally steer clear from, because again, we're not using like a normal mouse. It's a Joy-Con tilted on its side. It'll work for certain things, but not everything, and I don't think it would work as well for Splatoon and Prime 4. But with that out of the way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. We just went through 10 different games that could potentially receive this Joy-Con mouse support. 8 games I think it would work great in, and 2 that, I don't know, it might be a little hit or miss. As I said earlier, we really haven't been covering that many leaks, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video, because I think actually talking about like concrete game examples is, well, in my opinion, the only way to actually get like enjoyment from talking about these leaks. And also, it's just good to put out like a Switch 2 leak video, because, you know, when the Switch 2 gets announced, I want YouTube's algorithm to be like, oh yeah, we should probably recommend this Switched Up guy, even though we haven't been like spamming YouTube with videos featuring Switch 2 in the title and all that. Anyway, that's just a lot of rambling for me to say thank you guys so much for the support. Hopefully we get Switch 2 within the next like week or so, but hey, whether we do or don't, we'll be hitting you guys with the best content we can make. So thank you all for the support. I'm signing off. Peace.